All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of the Man Card podcast. This is going to be an exciting project where we talk about all things masculinity, manhood, and related topics. So for the first few episodes, we're going to introduce the team. We're all here today, myself, Tut, and Snoot, who's going to be covering the female perspective quite often on episodes. And so for episode 1, we're going to start with my story, and then we'll do Tut's story for the next and Snoot's for the third.
I think it'll get a pretty good balance here. A lot of different backgrounds. It's going to be able to provide some good insight into where this all came from. I think that's a big point of it. I know that you've been a guest on the No Windy Sleeves podcast a bunch, and we got a ton of really good feedback. So kind of going into this venture, but having people understand how our mindsets and who we are was created, I think is super important. So
Yeah.
Before we get guests on, it's good to have everyone's story.
Yeah, I think it's cool to just kind of know who you're listening to, where are we coming from. And this all, like you said, it started with the Masculinity podcast on No Windy Sleeves. And it was just kind of a thing that grew from there where we said, okay, we're getting some traction here. This is something we care a lot about. So let's devote a podcast to it and talk to other folks, and get guests who care about it as much as we do. So
Hell yeah. Well, dude, I guess I'm going to be taking over as the interviewer here.
You're the moderator interviewer
Woo,
here.
woo.
no pressure.
Would you give us, all right, so Dave, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you want to give us a little bit of background about kind of where you were born and raised to start kind of lay the foundation, for your journey.
Yeah, so 33 years old. I was born in Chesapeake, Virginia, and I grew up in eastern North Carolina for my entire life until I left for college and grad school and all that stuff. And I live in South Carolina today, so I've always been in the Carolinas for the most part, except for a couple years in California.
So you must not be loving this weather that you came
I
up
was
here
going to
for.
say
No.
you had the luxury of our first snowstorm of the
This
season.
is not what I'm used to.
I know. I picked you up at the airport, you had just T-shirt on. It was like still snow blowing around and everything. I'm like, definitely a guy from the South. Pops up here.
I was actually comfortable, though, because it's hot as hell in the airport.
Yeah, when you get out of the plane, it's like, thank God.
Yeah.
But so with your journey, so born, raised down south, southern guy. When you went to school, what did you go to school for?
So I went to, so first off, I went to a very small high school, played all the sports, graduated first in my class, which doesn't mean a lot because it was a small high school. But I did all that because that was pretty much my only shot to go to college. With the background I came from is I had to get scholarships. And so I ended up going to NC State University, double majored in biochem and zoology and minored in genetics. And I went on almost full academic scholarships. I had to get some student loans, but that's what I studied while I was there.
Were you a sports guy in high school? Played. Obviously you're a big dude. I would assume football.
Yeah, I played football. That was my main sport that I cared about. But then I also threw the shot put and disc, and I played baseball for 2 years.
Did you want to play a sport in college, or was that something that was?
Yeah, so I was supposed to throw the disc in college, and I
was supposed to throw the disc. Just a way of saying it.
I throw things far.
I was supposed to throw
like I had spoken to the coach and everything, and I was going to join, but then I decided against it because I really wanted to focus on grades and all that stuff.
One of the strongest dudes I've ever been around or trained with was I believe shot put and discus in college, and went to train for the Olympics before he got hurt. But absolute physical freak.
Yeah,
Those guys are no joke.
It was fun, man. I really enjoyed it. I broke the 1A state record while I was in high school. And with the disc, I wasn't good at shot put, but the disc, because it's so technique driven.
Yeah. I feel so going and choosing a double major essentially over, going and doing some athletics with it. So education for you, super, super important.
Yeah. I just always saw that as my way out because I grew up in a really shitty, household. Parents were both drug addicts. So both of my parents were 16 when I was born. Actually, my mom was 16, my dad was 15, and he turned 16 a little after I was born, I think. But they were both drug addicts, never really there. We were homeless a few times and just jumped around from, random strangers' houses. And it was a pretty shitty way to come up. And then, there was abuse and all that stuff. So for whatever reason, I locked in on education as being like the way out for me. So I was always really obsessed with that. And that's why I took it so seriously in high school and college and, all that stuff.
Did you have like a major influence in your life that was pushing you to do that, or was that something that you found internally?
Yeah, I think it was just sort of the antithesis to what I grew up in. And so that I saw it as like everything that I'm growing up in is bad. So this must be good. And nobody in my family like had an education or anything.
That's super impressive that, because I feel like a lot of people that go through that, there's usually one, big influencer that's pushing them towards it. For you to identify that yourself and stick to it at such a young age, and, it shows a lot of early maturity, honestly, because a lot of people don't find that out till after college. Even.
Yeah, I think when you go through a lot of adversity when you're young, it forces you to grow up fast. You either grow up fast or you don't, and you succumb to all of it and just fall in line with it.
Yeah, that's something I did not know.
And I think that's knowing that about you. I think that was super important to when we were talking about it. It was like, what are your limits that we're going to talk about? What don't you want to talk about? And I think it's super important. Even when we did the masculinity podcast, I wanted more of that to come out because we sat there and we talked about, this is why I'm a masculine dude. I protect, I provide. But nobody really understood, because we didn't talk about it then, because we talked about so much, the fact that you were forced in order to do that, in order to survive. So I think that knowing the background of everybody, so social medias and everything judges the shit out of you, but nobody fucking knows that you were abused and neglected and homeless growing up. How the fuck else were you gonna survive?
That's such an important thing that you say, because you don't know everyone's story. You just see the stuff they have. Everyone probably thinks you have white privilege about it, or privilege in general.
Oh yeah.
You came from a shitty situation and made something of yourself.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. People are quick to judge just based off of what they see in the present day, and they have no clue where you're coming from. And in general, the whole white privilege thing, that neglects a whole subset of our population. I mean, there's a massive impoverished white population. If you don't believe that, just go to Appalachia and drive around, and it's unfortunate, because it's like, to go through, when I think about a kid going through what I went through, where it was survival and fighting to get to a certain level, and then being told that you are only at that level because you're white, it's like a punch in the gut.
That's I mean, that's I think that's a whole nother issue, and we gotta say the hour. I would have loved to have gotten into a little bit more of that. The damn hour-long episodes. There's not enough time to touch everything.
Yeah.
But so fast forward a little bit. I mean, from what you went to school for and your degrees, you'd think you would have gone and worked for NASA or something. What did you do right after you finished school?
So after undergrad, I went to grad school. I was supposed to do a PhD in biochemistry at UC Berkeley, but I was there for 2 years, and I decided to leave because I hated being in the lab. I love teaching and working with people and teaching people about science, but I didn't enjoy doing actual science because it's really fucking boring. You're sitting in a lab, for hours, and so I hated that, and it was a really pivotal moment for me because I had a fully paid fellowship, like this really prestigious National Science Foundation thing, and I went to my research advisor, and he like lost his mind, because I was like his NSF fellow, and that's like a big deal to these guys, but it just wasn't for me. So I walked away from basically having the next several years of my life just kind of paid for and taken care of, and went back home, jobless, overeducated, unemployed, no money. And just had to figure things out at that point.
Was training always something that you loved? Was a passion of yours throughout all of that, though?
Yeah, in various capacities. So, I've trained more functional CrossFit style, bodybuilding, powerlifting kind of, but I've always done something like that.
Did you know going through that and through school that eventually you wanted to kind of get into this field, or was it kind of something that just popped up?
It was always, it's weird because I interview a lot of people now as part of my job for First Form, and a lot of times people ask my story too, how, especially my story with First Form when I'm interviewing them. And it's like for whatever reason, I never like gave myself permission to pursue fitness as my life's work or my career. I think because I just always assumed I needed to do something more like prestigious or whatever, which is total bullshit and stupid, and just really listening to society instead of listening to your heart. But it was always my passion. It was always like what I truly loved. And then that was a big driver for why I left Berkeley, because, for one, and we talked about this in the masculinity episode, I was like, I did not fit in at all. I was totally not the typical UC Berkeley student. And so I hated that. And then also that was more when I started to consider and think more about like getting into fitness in a more serious capacity. And that just played into why I didn't want to be in the lab. You know, I was just like, you know, this is not me. And, but no, I never looked at it as like what I could actually do. It was always just sort of my thing, like my personal sanctuary away from all the bullshit.
I always find that, I know for me, and we'll probably get into more about me in 2 more episodes, but with your background, I think that even though it wasn't what you were pursuing, you're one of the smartest fucking people that I know when it comes to nutrition things. And I think that has a lot to do with your background in like biochem and all of that shit. And you're not just looking at food, you're looking at the chemical makeup of what's mixing inside and what is the best time of this, and this. And I know that you're doing it for Tut.
Yeah, eventually I've been.
You put mine together, I'm already like, and it's just really refreshing to hear because I'm a huge science person and I really enjoy when I get to pick your brain on, well, why am I eating this with this at this time? And if I ask you, well, can I eat this instead, being the typical fucking nutrition client, just like, no, because I would rather this type of carb be with this type of protein at this time. So it's like, even though wasn't in your vision, you went to school and are brilliant when it comes to that, and it just makes you that much more valuable as a nutrition coach because you have a different background of just taking a nutrition specialty on top of your CPT.
It helps. I mean, I know a lot. I know a lot of dietitians and nutritionists who are like, I'm like, really? Like, come on.
That's why I'm super excited to work with you from that. I feel like I'm going to learn more too. Like, that's a big piece of it. Instead of just you having it mapped out, even like the quick little text you sent in the group chat, she said something about what to eat after a workout.
Oh, yeah.
And you were like, no, because of the
intramuscular glycogen. Yeah.
Like off the rip.
I was asking if
like,
I could have bacon.
Yeah. Yeah. You get all scientific on, and that's learning stuff too along the way, which is super important.
Right.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's definitely helped. Like, it's all science, you know. And I just, for whatever reason, I never saw it as what I could do. I'm glad I do it now. Like, I'm extremely happy. I'm doing what I love. But for whatever reason, it took a while. And then so after grad school, I went back home, had no prospects, no nothing. I considered law school for a little bit just because I was like, having a background in science, if I go into law, I could do patent law, and it's very, you know, you make good money. But then I was like, there I am again, just fucking trying to do something that I don't really like or care about. So I was like, let me just get a job, and, you know, I'll keep figuring things out, but I got to make money. So I just applied. It was literally an ad on Craigslist. It was like, have a background in science, ? Don't want to actually be a scientist, want to work in corporate America. I was like, that sounds, you know, okay.
You're
so
like looking around, like, did somebody fucking listen to what I'm saying?
Yeah, I didn't like necessarily want to work in corporate America, but I was like, I do know that I want to get more business experience. So I you know, applied for it. It turned out it was scientific recruiting, which is basically recruiting and hiring scientists for companies in like pharma and chemical. And so I worked with, like, you know, all the big pharma guys, chemical guys, defense guys. They would say, like, so I ended up getting that job. They would say, like, hey, we need an engineer that has experience with, you know, FPGA, whatever technology. And so I would go find that person, interview them, qualify them, and then send them to, you know, say Northrop Grumman or whoever it was. And like, that was my job for 8 years. So I did that for quite a while. Made great money. You know, that's basically why I kept doing it, because it was like easy for me to talk. I got to talk about science all day. You know, it was really fun. And then a few years into that, I had kind of like saved up some money, and me and a buddy were looking to get out of corporate America at that point, which I feel is like kind of like the natural progression. You start a corporate job and then you're like, fuck this, let me get out of this corporate job. And so we went in together and started a bar business. It did well. 6 months later, we opened a second one. 6 months later, we opened a third one. And then at that point, you know, and I'm still working my full-time job. I mean, we talked about this a little bit last time, but full-time job, owned 3 locations with 100 employees, and I was also doing a lot of like real estate investing at the time. So I was just running myself ragged, spread way too thin.
So you're a go guy. Like you don't
To a
like
fault,
downtime.
to a fault a lot of times. Like I don't sleep enough. I don't take care of myself in that regard as much as I should. And like legitimately, I need to be better about that. But I kind of found my limit, and I had never done that before, taking on this and this and this and this, and then just kind of really seeing what I was capable of. And I found that place.
And did you have a daughter? Did you have her during all that time?
Yeah. When we had my daughter, I still owned the bars. I was still working in corporate America. I had started nutrition coaching as well, and I had a few real estate projects going. So I was like,
just
too much.
Yeah.
It was too much, man. So we got lucky. A group came along and offered to buy the bar business. We sold. And then it was just, kind of the corporate job, finished up the real estate projects. So I was doing that and coaching. I could spend more time with my daughter. Eventually, the beginning of this year when coronavirus hit, I left the corporate job. And now I just coach full time. And so, I originally discovered First Form via Andy Frisella and the MFCEO project because I was a huge fan of his while I was building my business. So I literally opened my first bar location in June of 2015, which is when the first MFCEO dropped. So from day one, running my business, I listened religiously to the MFCEO project. And then when I decided I was going to get involved in the fitness industry in a larger capacity, and I wanted to get more exposure to supplements specifically because with my background in biochem and physiology, I've always sort of considered the supplement industry as a legitimate way, for me to get involved in the fitness industry. It was a no-brainer to get involved with First Form.
Oh, yeah.
So I joined the Legionnaire program, kind of, did that for a while, incorporated that into my coaching, got a sponsorship as a brand ambassador, and got the opportunity to go out to HQ several times and do some fun stuff out there, and just kind of kept growing with the brand. And now I work as a recruiter for headquarters, interviewing potential sales reps and athletes and stuff.
So do you really enjoy the recruitment process? Seems like you got into that with it in the
yeah, and it's funny because that's something that I just fell into. I never thought that was, I never knew that was a passion I had until I started doing it. And I really enjoy trying to figure people out, trying to find out what makes people tick and where their values are and what they're trying to do with life and kind of exploring the human condition. And interviewing allows you to do that. And this podcast is going to allow us to do that too.
And you probably you've met a ton of essentially different types of people.
Yeah.
You're interviewing 10, 50 people every single day for the last however many years. You've probably seen
it's
pretty,
fun.
Pretty wide variety of people out there.
Yeah. So at one point, I was still doing the science and engineering recruiting, but then I had the bar business. So I was like, during the day, I'm interviewing PhD engineer and scientists, and then at night I'm interviewing like line cooks and waiters and bartenders. So it was a really cool juxtaposition of two worlds, and I had to use a very different approach, to interviewing those folks. And so it really taught me a lot about people, and to never have preconceived notions about folks based off of like their chosen pursuit in life, because I've worked with a lot of scientists who were unreliable motherfuckers, and I've worked with a lot of line cooks that I would trust with any aspect of my life.
Hell yeah.
So
that's probably one of my worst traits. I'm not a very good hirer. I have a lot of blind trust in people.
Well, I think that's okay, but you have to be, I think that's being a good hirer, to be honest, but you have to be a good firer as well.
Yeah.
That's what's important. Quick to fire. You have to
fire fast, hire slow.
Yeah. Well, but if you hire fast, definitely fire fast.
Yeah. That's I think we've touched on it before about basically hiring or bringing people in off resumes, right? Like, so resume hiring is very, very difficult because you really don't know what you're getting, especially because I forget who was just talking about it. I think it was Sean Whalen was talking about how a
Shout
degree.
out. Lions not sheep.
Hell yeah. A degree is just a showing that you can do your chores, right? No, it wasn't Sean. Who the hell was it? Anyways, that was just
Never
our
mind,
podcast.
don't shout him out.
Yeah, we'll still shout
Still
him
wearing
out.
his shirt.
Fuck the
It's all good.
No, it was
We
Elon
love you,
Musk.
Sean.
It was Elon Musk. He's talking about
Even
how,
better guy to talk
how
about it.
college, it's really irrelevant now because you can learn anything anywhere for free.
Yep.
And college is just showing that you can do your chores. They give you the list to go do it.
Look, man, when I was at UC Berkeley in grad school, I taught comparative physiology, I taught environmental toxicology, and I taught biomechanics. Most of my students were pre-med. I was blown away at how stupid some of these fucking people were. They went on to become neurosurgeons, heart surgeons, you know. So the degree is really, it's so not important in my opinion. And when I would recruit scientists, I would have requirements from my client, and that's all I would look at the degree for, or the resume for. I didn't care about anything else. I was just, do they meet the minimum requirements my client's working for? All right, now let me get them on a phone, because I want to explore the intangibles. You know, I want to find out who the human is, because great, you have knowledge of FPGA technology and you can work on these self-guided missiles for Raytheon. Awesome. Now let's find out if you're worth it for them, you know.
We've talked about that as well. I feel like we've talked
Raytheon?
about everything. Yep.
Have you seen Raytheon?
I worked on some crazy projects for those guys.
I want to, before we continue into, because I know that we like to divulge and stay into the fitness part of it, we have not spoken about the fact that you went to school for fucking zoology
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, so
I want to know about fucking zoology and what the fuck you did with
That's
that.
why he took your question about the fight with the animals so deep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He's really
I know.
thinking about
You're
it.
like, Jess, it doesn't
was
fucking
getting
make
really
sense.
frustrated.
This question doesn't fucking make sense. They fly and they swim.
yeah. I'm like, those intrinsic characteristics are what make predators the type of predator they are. Like, you can't eliminate those. But we're not going to go into that.
They
on
have
here.
no idea what we're
Yeah,
talking about.
sorry.
So just go back into zoology.
So when I started, I love animals. I always have a soft spot for animals. I have 2 corgis, and they're, you know, my OG kids. But when I started college, I wanted to be a veterinarian. So the way it happened was I started as a zoology major only, and as I progressed through school, I at one point made the decision that I wanted to switch to human medicine. So I was pre-med. That's when I added the biochemistry major because it would make me more attractive to grad school. And then after being pre-med for a while, I started working in a research lab on it was a neuroscience lab. We were mapping the movement of neurogenital precursor cells in the forebrain. It was like really cool work, but
That's face just had a little bit of Bell's palsy.
people listening to this who know about that stuff will know what I'm talking about.
Props to you guys.
Yeah, it is just
Keep going.
dumb science shit. But when I started doing that, I really, at that point, I thought I liked working in the lab. Like, I was really interested in the actual science. So then I switched to, I want to be a scientist. That's when I added the genetics minor. So I just kind of kept adding things. And, you know, zoology and biochem double with genetics minor. And then I ended up working, the lab I worked in the most when I was in undergrad was actually on growth hormone and IGF. And
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Not to foreshadow what ended up happening in life, but I understand I understand the biochemistry of hormones quite intimately. So I was in an endocrinology lab.
But what did you get to do with your zoology major? I'm interested in these animals, and you're not giving me anything about animals.
I mean, I just took a lot of classes on like comparative physiology, taxonomy,
Did you go
animal
places?
behavior.
Did you get to go travel places to?
No, not for that. But in grad school, I traveled a lot for my research. So my research in grad school was on a functional. So it was functional genomics, which is basically looking at the genes that are expressed in any given time in a tissue as a result of a stimulus. So we were looking at how the body responds to heat stress, pH stress, all these different things in the context of climate change, because that's where the funding was. And so I was like, you know, exposing different marine invertebrate species to different stimuli and then looking at what genes were expressed. So to do that, though, I had to collect specimens. So I got to go like up and down the coast of Mexico and like camped out and collected different species, and all the way up to like the Sonoma coast. And So it was really cool. We were working on with this one specific type of crab mostly because it's highly adaptable and can like survive in super low pHs, super high temperatures, all the. So it lives in the intertidal zone, which is like the difference between high and low tide, basically, where you have the most flux in conditions. So anyway, we were looking at how this crab does that because we were like, how the fuck do they withstand like drying out, low pH, high temperatures, like. And then, there's obvious applications if you can kind of pinpoint what genes and what proteins do that to like, all kinds of shit, really.
You might be the world's most interesting man.
But that's what I'm saying.
Highly doubtful.
This is what I'm saying, though, is like we come in here and we're like asking it, and finally we got to hear about his past, and then we talk more about like athletics and shit like that. But like, who the fuck?
I'm with you.
There's so many different, and you're only 33.
Well, I think
like, what have I done? I just turned 30 yesterday. I haven't done.
Yeah, Jess did turn 30.
That's why I'm always so tired.
I haven't done half of the shit. Fuck.
No, but it was fun. It just kind of, happened that way. Like I just followed the different paths that life took me.
It's funny because nobody would know that. Like, and you definitely get the stereotype meathead.
Oh,
They
yeah.
think just pick shits up and put it down. But
He said
until
like
they
4
listen.
words already that I keep looking over at sometimes.
That was supposed to be a rule for this podcast. He was just pre-screaming on big words he's going to use, so I know what they are.
I didn't know how in depth we were going to go. Sorry. I send Jess a word of the day now.
Can
Yes,
you
I get a
CC
word.
me on that?
Okay, first off, I get a word of the day and I get an animal of the day.
Yeah.
I'd like to be on that.
Okay,
all right.
we'll put it into the podcast thing.
Yeah. We'll put it on the group text.
So,
A charge
so
bear.
you do all that crazy shit, right? What made you take the final leap to want to get into kind of fitness and everything full time?
Doing what I love, listening to what I'm actually passionate about, and I just figured with the background I have and the knowledge I have of physiology and biochemistry and my love for fitness, sort of a natural course of action was to coach people on nutrition, and I do some training as well, but that's just what I love, man. Like I could sit down and talk about it and do it all day long.
Fuck, I agree. I think that's how we all honestly ended up here.
Yeah.
What? So even fast forwarding a little bit more to where we're at right now with this podcast. I mean, what's your main hope and goal to really be able to get from it for people? Because I think them honestly learning about your background and how educated you are, it's going to be a lot more than us just talking about doing man shit, because there's a lot more. It's a lot more in depth than that.
Yeah. Yes and no, because I think, one thing I'm passionate about is sort of dispelling like the stereotypes that a guy who looks like me can't understand functional genomic, science, or
Sure.
but you know what I mean? Like it's okay. Like you can be into masculine, manly shit and also have a soft side and like science and
Right, you can also continue to be a gentleman and chivalrous and knowledgeable.
Yeah. And so if I was to gain one thing out of this whole fucking experiment or project or whatever, it's just to teach young men that it's okay to embrace all sides that you feel compelled to be, and don't have that experience or that feeling that I had when I was at UC Berkeley trying to fit in, because I'm happier now with who I am and than I ever have been, and it's just it's okay to be into like an eclectic assortment of shit. You can be a real fucking man and still be into science or whatever. Like that's fine,
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point that we're all on the same page with. We feel very strongly about, and I think some of the people that we're going to be getting on here are going to be able to really exemplify that as well, and the different types of people and people like Jess, females that view it the same way.
Yeah.
People are going to be able to see it from all sides of the spectrum, so they're not so quick to judge.
Right, and that's why I like guys like, like Mark Bell. He talks about being a meathead millionaire. And I like that because it combines those two worlds. It's like, yeah, you can be a meathead and love to lift and do all that shit, but you can also be a savvy business person,
Of course.
It's okay to be both of those things. Like you can be, that's why I like Lane Norton. He's a PhD, super bright guy, also a power lifter. Like you can be all those things, it's okay.
Yeah, and I think for us, that's one of the really attractive things, and why we were really excited to kind of work with you, is that it's not just you're another person on Instagram who's in fitness with a lot, a big following. It's much more of the additional value and the education and how in depth you can go into the other things that
Yeah, we need more of that, I think, and that's why, like, the whole reason we found each other and started all this is because I found Jess on Instagram through my recruiting for First Form, and she exemplifies that. She's not just like, being your typical Instagram fitness person. She's talking about exercise science, and she shows the different important aspects, and you can learn. And that's harder and harder to find, because what happens is people find that recipe for getting likes and they really double down on that, and next thing you know, most girls' accounts are just pictures of their ass.
I was just about to say, hers is less about the angle of the photo to make her ass look better and more about the science and the detail you're getting into the exercise and the programming.
Every time somebody...
I was recording video for you yesterday, and I was like, what angle do you want? You were like, just don't show my ass.
Yeah,
and I'm like...
I was like, I'm doing a Penley row. I would rather you be to the side of me so you
See the
can
movement.
See the movement.
Yeah,
please.
but I mean, look, most girls would
But that
be
happens,
the
like,
opposite.
if somebody asks me, if I have, like, my phone set up, and again, this is your episode, but if we're talking about it, if I have my
we're
phone...
talking about important.
Yeah, no, I know. But if we have, like, my phone set up and, like, a girl or somebody comes over, they're like, oh, do you want me to record you? I've started to say no, because people will... If I used to say yes, I would get a video of it just staring straight into my ass, no matter if it's fucking bicep curls or a bent over row. I'm like, what is
so
that
true.
showing?
And
what is
you
that
could blow
doing?
you could have 50,000 followers tomorrow if you
100%.
just started taking
It would
pictures
be game
and
over
shit.
for these bitches if I
Yeah.
decided to fucking do
Yeah.
that.
So that's what makes
But
you
it's true.
snoot. That's a
Yeah.
snoot right there.
That's
Yeah.
a fucking snake.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's true. I mean, she does jujitsu and trains people and, like, shows all of that. And we just need more of that. We need more of people trying to show that these different, very important aspects of life, instead of just the superficial bullshit.
But I also want to bring, getting back to you, since this is supposed to be about you, and I hate when we talk about
But that
me
was
anyway.
about me. I just had to...
I know. But once we get to my episodes, it's going to be terrible talking about me. But with it, I also, in our masculinity podcast, wanted to bring up the fact, after the fact I always think about things, the fact that you are very humble in, like, what you've done. Like, I've never once had a conversation or heard a conversation with you like, boasting about how intelligent you are, or what school you went to, or how much money you made off of those businesses.
Yeah, you don't even take compliments very well.
No, it's not even that. But it's also like so many men who think that they're masculine or who think that they're a boss. Like, if they were in Dave's situation where he made however much money off of selling those businesses and then continued on, like, he could sit here and talk about the money that he's made or the things that he has or the things that he could have had, but he doesn't. And I think that's also a big misconception about masculinity in itself, is the fact that these men who have billions and millions of dollars but are a piece of shit human being like to call themselves, or people see them or view them as masculine. The amount of money you have, just because, again, we talk about protecting and providing, just because you could provide with money, that's not what we're talking about, protecting and providing. You could protect and provide and be a masculine, like, good man with nothing in your pocket. Just because you have money does not make you masculine. Mm-hmm. And the people that sit here and boast about it and, like, come in and, like, make sure that you see, like, how well they're doing or whatever, again, that's not a masculine man. That's an insecure projecting man.
Yeah.
If they have to sit here and talk about their successes and
Yeah.
overcompensating and being like,
It's true.
again, him just talking about selling businesses never once said how much money he made off of
never.
it or anything about it.
Never even off camera.
No, never.
No, I mean,
Ever.
it's, in my opinion, like, I mean, there's a few things there, but, like, first off, that's something that I hate when other people do it, right? And so
It's annoying. You don't
Yeah.
want to speak to people who are like that.
yeah, and secondly, like, pretty sure nobody fucking cares, and thirdly, I mean, it's just I think it's very important to always remember that you really ain't shit.
Yeah.
That, like, there's so much that I have to learn and accomplish in this life that's left, that the minute you start talking about what you've done as though you reached an end point, you're going to reach an end point, and I don't think that's productive. And honestly, like, I'm not super proud of, like, that business and selling that business and everything. It was just a step along the way. And I learned a lot from it. And yeah, I mean, it was cool to see it from building it to selling it and all of that. But that's just kind of part of things. It's not. And I mean, somebody slammed the
Aggressive
door.
slam.
Someone's projecting.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I just feel like it's not. It's not that important, and it doesn't provide you guys any value or anybody listening any value to talk about shit like that, except
Yeah.
for what you learned from it and how you did it and how other people can take that and do something with it.
I love that. I think being humble about everything too is a big piece of being a man.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I agree.
That's the.
Yeah.
So we're gonna head to wrap here, but I think that was a really good first one, and we're looking forward to hearing more from you.
Yeah. Also, important part of my story. I have a daughter, and she's almost 4, and her name's Carter, and I love her very much.
Carter the goat. What did she got a new trademark slogan for us. We're gonna keep it on the hush, but
Oh yeah, yeah. Or we can keep it on the hush.
nah, you
I'm
can
not-
drop it.
So
She'll get all the rights in.
I had the new Windy Sleeves snowman shirt, the red one, the Christmas one, and she loves Frozen, which has the snowman Olaf. And so she asked me if I had Olaf on my shirt, and I told her it was Swoloff.
Swole off.
Yeah.
And so now she just
Coming
goes around.
2021.
Now she says Swoloff.
Coming 2021.
Yeah. She also tells me I look like Olaf because I have the mohawk, and he has just like the little branches on him.
Please,
I've yet to watch it, so I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have.
You're
to
gonna
start
have it on
watch soon.
repeat.
You're,
Yeah.
you're gonna know every word of it.
Can
You're
you
gonna
sing
have
the
a
song for us right
few-
now?
Yeah. I could.
We won't do that to
In
you yet.
tune.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But I will belt it at the top of my lungs with my daughter.
I know. We see the dances. It's one
Yeah.
of those things you just take it down because you don't give a shit. It's about her. It's not
No,
about
man.
yourself.
Yeah, it's so freeing to not give a fuck what people think about you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to end that.
Yeah.
Don't give a fuck.
Don't give a fuck about what people think about you. Be yourself. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.